Hello, everyone. Guillaume Mitzvah here, host of the E-commerce Wizards podcast, where I feature leaders in e-commerce and business. Today's guest is Dan Hubbert. He's the CEO of Power Music. He runs the e-commerce store powermusic.com, powermusiccheer.com, and an app called Power Music Now. We'll be talking about his career as a music executive, his entrepreneurship journey, and of course, his e-commerce expertise. He did start at first with a sort of home-built e-commerce store. He then moved this to a Magento open source, which is the free version of Magento. And then he evolved this into a Magento Enterprise. That's the former name. Now it's called Adobe Commerce website, which is the paid version of this. So we'll talk about this evolution. Before we get started, our sponsorship message. This episode is brought to you by MageMontreal. If a business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up dormant inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to gain efficiency and reduce human processing errors, our company, MageMontreal, can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We're specialized and only work on the Adobe Magento platform. We do everything Magento related. If you know someone who needs design, development, maintenance, training, support, debugging, we got their back. Email our team, support@magemontreal.com, or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com. All right, Dan, thanks for being here today.
All right, thank you for having me.
I'm not very familiar with the music industry, and you have an impressive background. Can you tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, so my life started out as a musician. When I was 11 years old, my brother asked my parents if he could take guitar lessons, and I had no interest in taking guitar lessons, but I said, I want to take guitar lessons too. So I ended up getting into music at a very young age. And I ultimately really learned to love to play the guitar, and I still do to this day. I ended up going to music school in Hollywood, California, to Musicians Institute, and really got into music, like toured a little bit, built a recording studio, was following kind of my dream to be, it went in a lot of different roads. At one point I wanted to be a rock star. At another point I wanted to be a studio session player, and I had all these different ideas. But one of the things that I think that I always thought about along the way was, I didn't like the idea of starving artists. So I really wanted to focus on the business that I was trying to get into. And I wanted to learn about it. And I wanted to know as much as I could about the actual business itself. And that actually led me to working in the area of radio promotion for an independent company. So I started to get to have relationships with people at record labels. We were getting records played on radio stations around the country, calling program directors and music directors at radio stations. And it turned out I was fairly decent at it. And I then got hired by Columbia Records when I was 24 years old. And I ended up having a pretty decent career in the record industry. I was senior vice president of promotion for a few labels. It went really quickly. I was only in the actual formal record business for 10 years, but I had a very fast-tracked career there. So this idea of getting into and understanding the business side really got me into the business. And so I became more of an executive of music than an actual artist, which is fine. And like I said, I still play a lot for myself, so I never lost my relationship with my instrument.
I understand that. I'm a former professional visual artist and technologist turned into an entrepreneur, so turned business executive. So I totally understand that part. Of course, working at Columbia must have been a great way to build your contacts and then start a music company selling records.
Yeah, well, it's funny because going to music school, that's not like a proper university, right? So I really, as far as traditional education, I just played guitar for 15 hours a day. But Columbia Records was really my college. That was where I really learned so much about life, the music industry, business in general, how to run a big staff of people. And at the end of my career in the traditional music business, I was running promotion for Capitol Records. And in 2004, I left Capitol, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I kind of lost my step a little bit for wanting to do radio promotion. And so for a while, I was doing other things. I was doing music supervision, and then I actually like met this guy while I was on vacation who had this fitness music company called Power Music. And I asked him what that was, and he said, "Well, we take all the biggest hits on the radio and we turn them into fitness versions and we sell them to fitness instructors." And I thought that was fascinating. And he thought my background was very interesting. And so we started a relationship, and I started consulting the company, because one of the things that I really thought was, besides the group market, where else could we market and sell this product? And from there, I had a small record label, I had a relationship with iTunes, and we ended up taking the product and marketing it to consumers. And that's a wild story into itself, which I'm happy to share, but that's kind of like just keeping in line where we're going here. That was the trajectory of me getting into the fitness music industry, which was something that kind of came down, out of the blue.
For sure, because this is the first challenge I had in mind when I heard the concept, power music, okay, music for fitness. You can change the beat and so on, and it fits your fitness session there, which is really cool. It's like, okay, once you reach out to fitness instructors, I don't know how many there are in the country. I have no idea how big that market is. I'm like, okay, what's next? So you were able to go direct basically and distribute on iTunes and so on to get some lift.
And the company has evolved a ton since then, which I'm sure we'll get into. But so at that time, we were making mixes and selling them to an instructor. The instructor takes that mix and they go into the classroom at, you name it, LA Fitness, 24-hour Fitness, Equinox, so on and so forth. And they would basically teach a class to our mix. And it's a great relationship because, we did all the work for them. These mixes are all full of all the latest hits. So, and they're all at like whatever tempo for whatever class they were teaching. So if you're talking about a hit class, it's 140, 150, 160 BPM mix of, all the latest and greatest music, and including ballads that we would then turn into like, 4 on the floor versions. Now, what happens next is the music industry starts to evolve, and Spotify happens, and Spotify starts to kind of like become a thing, and then Apple iTunes buys Beats, and their whole subscription model, and so now iTunes becomes Apple Music. And this was a big change because we started to look at this and say, wow, America, which was really one of the last countries in the world to accept subscription models. That was not something that was very American. It was happening a lot in Europe, Scandinavia, Australia. They loved subscriptions. But then, like, I think things like Netflix and Spotify to a certain degree, and some others kind of like opened the door for subscriptions, and people started to realize, like, we really do like these. We really do like subscriptions here. So that was when we were at a crossroads, because we realized that without our own subscription model, all these other companies were going to own our customers, right? So Spotify would own our customers, Apple would own our customers, and we would basically be completely at the mercy of these other businesses in order for our own survival. And that made me very uncomfortable. So back in 2012, 13, 14, we took the steps of developing our own app, our own platform. And, that was really the turning point where we kind of stopped being only a music company and really started to become a technology company.
Right. So is that when you started your first e-commerce store?
So no, we always had we had the website. As a matter of fact, so the trajectory with me was in 2010, my relationship with the company changed because I actually purchased it. And so I really liked the business model. I was very passionate about what we were doing. And so now, we had a website, we redid that, we went to the Magento platform and we really were heavy e-commerce. And but we needed a solution for the market dynamics changing to be, subscription. And we really wanted to own our customers. So we developed this app and we continue to develop the app to this day, which has been a huge success. And it really comes down to taking all of our amazing content, making all of it available for one low price, which was a big deal, right? Because
yeah, it is a big deal.
You're selling, and professional mixes sell for more than the normal album. We sell a mix for $15, but now we're talking about $15 or $14.95 for everything we make, including our video content, which we can talk about. And all for one low price.
Which is impressive, because then you need to have the volume of users for this to make financial sense for the company, because you used to sell each album at least $15.
Correct. And look, you kind of touched on it. The number varies. The total addressable market does vary around the world. And so they don't do surveys every year, but there's probably a couple 100,000 fitness instructors in the US, right? Okay. And it's a very fluid profession, because people come in and out of it a lot. And there's a lot of people who teach classes part-time. They're moms, and they're like, I want to teach 3 yoga classes a week. That's it. So, and then this summer, I'm going to hang out with my kids. I'm not going to teach. So you get a lot of influx and outflux happening, because it's just the nature of the business of fitness, right?
And it's a marketing challenge for you to stay in touch with the new guys that come in the market all the time.
Yes. A lot of our churn with the app is people who are just pausing because they're taking 3 months off, or they're going to take a year off, and then they come back. So it's a very interesting marketplace in that regard. But there are also a lot of new instructors constantly coming in as well. So our job is always to kind of balance the churn and capture the imagination of the newbies coming in, so that we can have a consistent growth. And that is kind of our strategy, worldwide.
And before we get into the Magento and e-commerce discussion there, the technical side, I'm curious, how do you address and reach out for that market? Is it advertising campaigns, or just try to grow the subscription list? What's the approach? Because you have such a volatile market in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a pretty robust mailing list, and we still are to this day converting people from downloads. We literally this year just stopped selling all physical product. Okay. And we've been trying for years to do it. But as some of our older customers, they've been dealing with CDs and DVDs forever, and they're like, I just want this. And so we've tried to service it, but the numbers kept dwindling. I personally, and really us as a company, are concerned about the environmental impact of plastic and all that stuff that goes into making physical product. And also, gyms are doing away with a lot of those devices that would support that. So we needed to kind of wean people off of it. We ran a lot of sales. We did a lot of marketing. We also did a lot of tutorials, and in some cases, hand-to-hand combat with customers, where it's hey, let us sit down with you and show you how this app works. It's super easy. And we were very successful in getting people to convert.
Which is amazing too. If you have to do like, as you call it, hand-to-hand combat with customers, and it's $15 a month membership, like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, a lot of these customers, we did the analysis, and they were spending, around, the average was around 120 to 130 bucks a year anyway, buying CDs, buying DVDs. So it was a accretive for us, because now you're talking about $180 a year for 15, but it was also a much better deal for them, because now their library that they get to offer to their classes is infinite. Yeah. So I kind of look at that as the ultimate win-win. We had a nice, we realized a nice bump, but they also realized the same bump in a different way.
It's beautiful when you express it this way, because it's been a question, like, sure, if you're Netflix and you have millions of users, it makes sense. If you're Amazon Prime, it makes sense. But on a smaller scale, how does it make sense? And now you've got it, because you increase anyway the certainty of your revenue to 180 instead of an average of 120 sort of yearly lifetime customer value there. So you make more and they have access to more. So it's a win-win thing. And it costs you nothing anyway, because it's digital download, a little bit of hosting bandwidth. That's it.
Sure. Yes, correct.
Okay. And I'm curious, because you were, I believe, on a previous e-commerce platform, and you decided to move to Magento Commerce. Like, what made you choose Magento? What were the challenges and so on?
That's a great question. I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't know a lot about e-commerce tech. And so I looked at different platforms. At the time, like Shopify I don't even know if Shopify was available. Like, we're talking, this is like 2010 here. So I'm not sure when Shopify came out, but that wasn't really on the table. It was, our developers had worked and built Magento platforms before. When we looked at everything, we all kind of concluded that Magento was robust enough, and mainly for us, customizable enough because of our technology, which we can get into. We have very specific technology that we needed a customizable platform. And Magento was the one at the time that seemed, most suited to what we needed.
Is this trend of Magento versus whatever? Like, Shopify is June 2006. It's listed, but of course it had to grow over the years. It was not a public company and so on.
It certainly wasn't.
It's not what it's today. No, exactly. But so in the strengths of Magento is the customizable aspect. So you say you have tech that needed customization. Can you give us a highlight of this?
Yeah, so this is probably the most exciting area of our business, and something that I absolutely love, and that is, so not only like making mixes is one thing, but giving people the tools to make their own mixes and be their own creators, I think, is the greatest thing. If they have the time, if you don't have the time and you've got 3 kids and you're trying to teach your classes and you just don't, we got your back, right? We're doing all the mixes, and that stuff is there for you, plug and play. But if you want to be the creator and you want to go into the library and pick and choose what you want, and not only that, take a song and set it to the tempo that you want, because not all, some people want a little bit more dynamism in their mix, where it's not all at 150 or all at 160. Maybe they want one track at 160, this track at 140. And maybe we made the track at 150, but you don't want it at 150. So we have technology that can take the track and time stretch it and move it to another tempo without losing the fidelity, without using the pitch. That is technology that is out there now, but like, we were one of the forefronts of creating this technology. So this is going back now to 2010, 11, 12. And we've now taken that technology, put it into the app, and added a time shifting on the fly. So for an instructor or even a fitness enthusiast, being able to play, let's say you create your mix and maybe you weave all these different tempos in because you went on our site and you did that and you created your app. But now you're in the middle of your workout or you're in the middle of your class and it's just not right. It's dragging or it's too fast. So on the fly, you can literally pitch up or down the tempo, slow the class down, speed the class up. It's a super cool tech. It's one of the like hallmarks of our app that people just absolutely love. And we just continue to develop it, continue to make it better. We've added timers to the app, tools to the app for instructors to use. We have a lot. We're constantly adding content to the app. And we just added all of our educational videos. These are pre-programmed classes, or they call it pre-choreography, to our app. So we're trying to continue to add value for the customer, along with like keeping up with the tech and keeping up with all of the things that you need to in order to have a fully functioning, reliable app.
Yeah, it's a fun technology. Otherwise, when you slow it down, it would just sound like slow motion video. It just sounds so bad, you know?
Yeah.
So that is a fun thing. And let's say, okay, in the positive side, that transition to Magento Commerce, like what kind of advice would you give to anybody else who wants to do the transition from the previous platform to this one in any regards? So from your personal experience, anything highlights that you'd like to share, things that went well or things to be careful about?
Yeah, I mean, we've been through a lot of, I wouldn't say ups and downs, just kind of like things we didn't know. When we first got onto Magento, we were using the community version. That no longer exists.
Well, they call it open source now. So Magento open source, yes.
Right. And we very quickly ran into limitations because we were just doing more, and we were asking it to do more than the open source version, right, could do. And so we very quickly ended up moving over to enterprise. And I think that, like, for the most part, our Magento experience has been good. For me, I would like maybe a little bit more. I love reports, and I like to look at things from different angles. I like to know things like, how many of these did we sell? How many units did we sell? Okay, cool. Well, who bought them? Where do they live? Where's the predominant, like outside the obvious, like, yes, we know LA, New York, London, but like, where is there a hotspot somewhere else? Is Austin bigger than Minneapolis? And I love the nuances of knowing, and that's just kind of like the old record industry stuff in me, is we always would watch where artists were breaking. Like Norah Jones I brought up Austin, she broke out of a record store in Austin, Texas. And, she didn't break out of Brooklyn, New York. She broke out of, and so like knowing these little hotspots, I always like to know like where our stuff is popular. And so, and Magento is great for that. And building out and being able to customize reporting, I think has been one of the biggest things that, I challenge it a lot because I want these kind of like very specialized reports. But for the most part, we've been pretty satisfied with the reporting aspect of it. Functionality has been great. Truthfully, I think that us as a company moving into the future, where we're looking at everything now from like, are we just an app company at some point? And one of the things is that all of the functionality of the app is built on Magento. So I don't think we'd ever leave Magento completely. We'd have to completely rework, the back end. But like, we're also kind of like, where are we going? What does our company look like in the metaverse? What does our company look like moving? There's so many things kind of like in front of us. It's exciting. I don't mean to digress. I just
Well, the metaverse is a special one. Yeah, that we'll see where that goes. For sure, the internet, the future will not be like it is now. That is for sure. Will it take the shape of metaverse? Maybe. Yeah, maybe sure. It will be called that, but will it be what it's currently seen as what it will be? Anyway, I don't want to play the crystal ball too much on that one. But for sure. Okay. So were you using Magento Business Intelligence for the reporting, or you were using the classic reporting?
The classic reporting. And to be honest, like I've looked at so much data that the reporting demands have kind of gone down a little bit because I have a pretty good intuitive feel for the business. But, in the beginning, when we first got on it and we didn't know a lot and we really were questioning and we really wanted questions answered, we used the traditional reporting quite a lot.
Yeah, for sure. You do want to do your decision with a mix of gut feeling and data, not just data or just gut feelings, for sure.
Correct.
For sure. And your app, you're saying, is running entirely on Magento for the back end. So you've built, I guess, some kind of headless or progressive web app, the PWA setup, and then your app, people install this sort of a shortcut toward that version. Okay, so that's why you're saying like the website is less the main distribution channel for you. It is the app that you install, but the app that you install is sort of just a shortcut to an altered version of your Magento backend.
Yeah, good question. The comment there is that, so as I mentioned, we just finished selling physical, right? Mm-hmm. We still sell digital and streaming video on the website. I think my kind of comment leading towards the future is I wouldn't be surprised in the next, say, 2 to 3, maybe max 4 to 5 years, if you were to come back to Power Music and it was simply a website promoting and pushing you towards the app.
Yeah, a few companies have done that. It depends on your marketing channel and where the business is at for you specifically. Like if it's a cream and beauty shop, and I mean, all the business happens online, Amazon types competitor, all the business happens on the website mainly. But if for you have such a strong relationship with the direct app channel installed, and anyway, it's the same backend, it's already built. You're using your website's backend to feed the data in your native app. So it's the same.
And there's still some things that people want to do on the website, which is like build your mix, right? So like going to the area, which is like customizing your mix, because whatever you do there, right, you save it in your account and then it's on the app. It's in your app. It's just easier to build these things. You know what I mean? So the evolution of that is kind of in progress. And how we deal with Web3, of course, nobody knows for sure. But, I think that we've kind of, in a way, followed a little bit behind the traditional record industry, just because of the way that our customer operates. Like they're kind of like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But then like now the traditional music industry is just exclusively streaming, I mean, I don't know what the actual ratio is, but it's got to be 70, 30, 80, 20 at this point. But so we are seeing ourselves now, our application, our subscription model is accelerating while the others are decelerating. And we're fine with that. That was the goal. That's, and so like we have a North Star. Our North Star is a number of subscribers now. That's our North Star. It's not like before it was all about, driving certain sales on certain releases. And now that's no longer even the focus. So the business has changed a lot just in the last 5 to 7 years.
And at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. And it's sort of what we see across the board on so many things, even Adobe switching from you buy a Photoshop, pay several $100s for it, to you buy a subscription, a license, you pay like $100 a month or whatever it is. You have access to all the creative apps now. So we can see the shift globally in many industry being reshaped this way. And of course, important to sort of stay current with the new technology shift, because you cannot just stay in the old ways and unless you become a specialty, you sell vinyl records or something. But that's it. So just to wrap up, is there anything that you would suggest to anyone, like some kind of personal lesson learned sort of, that as you were doing and building all this traffic on the app, the volume of sales that you have on the website and on the app, is there any kind of lessons learned that you'd like to share like this with other entrepreneurs trying to build their e-commerce websites to a great success?
It's a really, really great question. And yes, I think that some of the mistakes we made along the way were all financial in nature. So like the endeavor of a build out, even when it was just a simple e-commerce site, you have to really budget accordingly. If you under budget, you're just going to be in pain, right, the whole time. And so what we thought it was going to cost, it cost much more than that. So that's number one. You just have to understand that's the reality. Number two, we were eager in the beginning, and at times we embarked on build outs with firms that weren't qualified, and because it was a cheaper price. And we literally on 2 different occasions came to a dead end. In other words, project had to be abandoned. And this was after spending serious amounts of money, where the developers just couldn't no longer, they were beyond their experience. So it wasn't until we engaged with a major firm that we were able to kind of successfully build out. Now we had, our stuff is complicated. Even this firm said, your stuff is very complicated because you're talking about music files that need to all be specifically edited in a certain way. You're talking about beat mixing technology. You're talking about a lot of interfacing and live action with the server back and forth, to different touch points. So it wasn't easy. And my main thing would be just to kind of like make sure you budget accordingly and make sure you go to best of breed when you're doing these things, because it's sad to say, and it's an old trope, but it is like you kind of get what you pay for. And we really made the mistake and burned some serious amounts of money kind of chasing a savings versus chasing the quality product that we needed to have a business. And I don't think those two are actually comparable. It was a lesson learned for me, a hard one. So that's it. And then, the other part of it, and the last thing I'll say is, after you have it built, you really need to think about in advance the maintenance part of it. How is it going to be maintenance? Who is going to maintenance it? Are you going to have, and this is what I would recommend, having someone on staff who knows the system inside and out, who can do triage on those mornings when you wake up and the site is down, and really making sure that you have that properly vetted. So like build it with best in breed, have a maintenance plan, have a person that is available really 24/7 so that you can sleep at night as a business owner knowing that your system is going to be taken care of and you're never going to be in a situation that's kind of catastrophic or existential to your business.
Yeah, pretty good. And your in-house developer like this can anyway collaborate with external agencies if you need more diverse skill sets, because of course it's just like building a house. You got the plumber, the electrician, the foundation guy, this and that. So there's so many trades also involved in this kind of technological build up there. So then they can use a version control software like Git, so they don't overwrite each other's work and so on. So you can have your internal staff collaborate with external agencies, and we do a lot of that. It's very common to have in-house staff there for, regular content updates or whatever else there. Yeah.
So, and then the last thing with that too is like, so again, going back to the budgeting, the spending goes on, right? It doesn't, you built it, okay, we turned it on and now we're done. No, like the tech spending goes on. And so just make sure in your business plan that you have that budgeted, that your tech is never going to be zero. I feel like I'm making a very obvious statement here, but I think a lot of teams overlook like, oh, well, we'll budget X amount. Well, it's probably going to be X, Y, and Z amount, not just
No. Building a website is not you pour a foundation in concrete and never touch it again. On the contrary,
Correct.
it's a live thing that you always improve. And especially when it's profitable and successful, you reinvest money in what's making money to make more. And there's always more ideas and more stuff to do and more channels to explore and new features to add. It's like a never ending game. It's always evolving there. All right. Well, thank you, Dan, for sharing your entrepreneurship journey and your lessons learned there on e-commerce and running on a Magento Enterprise shop. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
My email directly is fine. It's D as in Dan, D Hubbert, Hubbert @ powermusic.com.
All right. Thanks for being here today, Dan.
My pleasure.